Okay, so in this video, we're going to be talking about this question: is ozone good or bad? So this question has been really confusing to me until recently when I learned about the characteristics of ozone, as well as its impact on the environment and human health. So let's dive right into it. So first of all, we got to understand what is ozone. So ozone by itself is just this chemical compound that has a chemical formula of O3. So by itself, it is neither good or bad. It is just a pale blue gas with a distinctively pungent smell. So let's move on to the others, the next slide. And so we have all heard of the environmental impact of losing the ozone layer and how that would cause more harmful solar radiation to reach the ground. Okay, so from here, it seems like the ozone layer is a good thing, and it prevents these harmful radiation from reaching the ground, and it protects human beings. But at the same time, we have also heard that ozone is also regarded as a type of pollutant and respiratory irritant. So what's going on here? Is it good or bad? So let's figure it out. So first of all, we're going to look at what's called, quote unquote, the good ozone. So the ozone in the stratosphere is usually considered as the good ozone, as it may react with intensive ultraviolet radiation and prevent it from reaching the surface of the Earth. So as you can see on the diagram on the right, it's preventing the UVC radiation almost totally, and it's preventing partially some of the UVB radiation, and it is allowing the UVA radiation, most of it, right? So what it does here is, since the UVC radiation is the most intensive ultraviolet radiation out there, it's preventing it from reaching the surface of the Earth. And if it does, it's gonna harm living objects, including human beings, because if we're exposed to these intensive ultraviolet radiation, we may develop some really serious illnesses like skin cancer and other horrible health problems. Okay, so let's talk about the environmental problem here. So the depletion of the good ozone. So the chief culprit of the depletion of the good ozone is called the chlorofluorocarbons, also known as CFCs. So it is present mainly in industrial zones and old air conditioners. It's basically this chemical. If you look at the chemical equations on the right, it's basically this chemical that reacts with oxygen, and it goes and it forms Cl and O2, and the Cl can then react with O3, which, if you remember, is our ozone, and it may bind to it and produce ClO and O2. So what it does here is that the Cl is binding to O3, is binding to one oxygen atom of the O3, and it's forming these two products that cannot, or not cannot, but they are really hard to be recovered, and they're really hard to go back to the form of O3. So that's why our ozone layer is being depleted. Is the chief culprit is the CFCs. So to stop the growing influence of the CFCs and protect the good ozone, what we did as human beings is that we held a conference. So an international agreement called the Montreal Protocol was established, which intends to rule out the use of CFCs by a huge amount and recommends alternatives. So this one, the Montreal Protocol, has been really successful, actually, and many areas with depleted ozone are starting to recover. Okay, so after we talked about the good ozone, we're moving on to what's called the bad ozone. So the bad ozone usually refers to the ozone in the troposphere. So if you wonder where the troposphere is, it's basically under the stratosphere, and it's basically the quote-unquote sphere that human beings and other living objects are dwelling in. So as you can see, it's just right here, and our plane is on this height, and our buildings here, our cars are driving here. So this is basically the atmosphere that we're living in. So, and if you can see, we have the dangerous ground level ozone in the troposphere, and the protective ozone layer in the stratosphere, as we mentioned previously. So the bad ozone usually refers to the ozone in the troposphere. So they're not directly released, but synthesized through complicated chemical reactions, which involve VOCs, volatile organic compound, and NOx, which stands for nitrogen oxide. And both of the VOCs and NOx have major anthropogenic sources like the automobiles. So why is it bad? Why is ozone in the troposphere bad? It is bad because it is one of the main greenhouse gases that may contribute to global warming. And many of you are familiar with the greenhouse gases, as a major one would be CO2, carbon dioxide, is contributing to the global warming as well. So in addition, it exudes pungent odor and is a respiratory irritant. Basically, if you inhale ozone directly, it may hurt your respiratory system so it's a very dangerous thing if you inhale it directly. Okay, so this is basically a brief summary of what we have just talked about. To answer the question in the beginning, is the ozone good or bad? If the ozone is in the stratosphere, it is usually considered good. If it is in the troposphere, the sphere that we live in, it is not always, but it is usually considered bad. And if you wonder where the troposphere is, this is the graph on the right is a great representation. It's from 0 to 10 kilometers. It's basically this right here that we live in, and the stratosphere, the second lowest atmosphere in the whole Earth atmosphere system. And the other three, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and the exosphere, those three components are really complex. So we usually do not talk about the presence of ozone in those three spheres. So hopefully this video is helpful, and hopefully you know more about the characteristics and the environmental crisis about ozone. Thank you.